You ever took a good bath? In silence? Just, let the silence wash over you like you're at a spring in the summer. So much beauty in a bath of silence. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for in a bath of silence. You're shifting worlds. I kid you not, you're shifting. 1 minute, you're on planet Earth. The next minute, you're on planet Paradise. So I asked you, have you been able to find that silence? Do you know what I'm talking about? The silence that fills the room. Deafening silence. Louder than a stampede of wildebeests. The roar of a tiger. A symphony of Beethoven louder than all those sounds. All that music. At some point, our language becomes really magical. It's always magical, but you can feel it and sense it. For example, when I say the silence fills the room, right now, the silence is spacious. And it seems like I'm just being metaphorical, poetic. But really, those words pretty much sum it up. The silence is spacious. The silence fills the room. The silence allows the roar, the symphony. The silence is the roar. The silence is the symphony. And I know your mind is too chaotic to really know what I'm talking about. I get it. What's more, when you live in that silence, that is concurrent and coextensive with sound and music, well, there's a joy and a bliss. It infuses all of your activity and all of your speech, even all of your thinking. Imagine not being bedraggled by neurotic complexity in the mind, so that you're always just trying to stay afloat, and you hardly can at all. A life raft of this system of thought and that system of thought, all of them designed to save you from your chaotic mind, when really all you have to do is just let that chaotic mind go. Let it dissolve in its own intrinsic bliss. hard to imagine, isn't it? It's for adepts and mystics and sages, but not you. You're going to be tortured the rest of your life. You don't believe in refuge. You don't believe that there's a cessation from all this craving, a cessation from all this madness. And I really blame you. There's so many snake oilsmen. Snake oil salesmen, charlatans, confidence men, confidence women. Everybody's selling something. And even those who've really, truly, actually realized the silence that fills the room, even they can charge a pretty penny, can't they? And you're thrown back on yourself, and you're like, are these people real? Why don't they give it to me for free? Well, of course, they've got to pay the bills just like you do. Buy food, finance their house, enjoy culture, clothing on their back. That's why they don't give it away for free. They charge for that peace, for that being, consciousness, bliss. And you're like, gosh, she must be a fraud. And they're like, no, just don't want to live in a cave. I don't want to be living in a monastery the rest of my life. So hand it over. You know, it can be a challenge to stay in that spacious silence and realize that it's the fundamental bliss of your being and release and salvation and liberation. Not only because it's just a challenge to maintain that consciousness, but also there can be so many distractions. Wealth, the news, a broken heart. Fame. Too much ego because there are too many fawning followers. How do you stay there? Well, it's really a death, to be honest with you. It's a death. That separate self sense that's vacationing in the spacious silence of bliss, contracted mind. It's like, I can't be on vacation all the time. I got to get back to the 9 to 5 of my egoic consciousness. That refuge of spacious silence and bliss, that's for the monks and the sages and the adepts and the mystics, but not for me. I'm just gonna vacation there. But the more you taste that realization, the more it starts to invite you, draws you in. And it can be gradual, it can be sudden. There's a whole spectrum of possibility, but this is either a gradual or a sudden death of your clutching to the separate self, what's called the ego. It's not this bad thing that people make it out to be. It's not evil or anything like that. The ego is just basically the frontal personality. It's your sense of self while you're awake and walking around. It's your personality. And if that's all you are, you gotta let go of that fixation, that identification. It's like a snake molting, shedding its skin. It's the same. And when you are no longer just identified with that small island in the ocean, then you realize, yeah, I'm this ocean itself. And then you keep going with your realization. You're like, I'm this ocean and I'm this island. So imagine walking around. You're at work at the grocery store buying a coffee or a cappuccino at the local drive-thru. And you're awake. What's that like? It's quite amazing, but it's also quite ordinary after a while. See, initially, when you start to awaken, when the ego, the separate self-sense, your frontal personality, understands that there's an ocean beyond the island, it can have these massive explosions of awakening. You know, they have various names: Kensho, Satori. Kensho is this small awakening. Satori is a full-on explosion. But over time, if you keep going, it actually becomes more and more normal, more and more ordinary. You are just hanging out there. And you really start to notice when you kind of get pulled out of it, and then you snap back into it like a rubber band. And that even happens less and less and less. And if you keep going, it becomes remarkable. And it's inexhaustible. There isn't an end. You realize everything is the ocean and the island simultaneously. Even the things that people want to condemn as being not spiritual, for example, or too egoic, things like anger, or contempt, or disgust, or even rage. All that can be inhabited as the ocean. All of that is still being. How could it not be? And it's the spiritual ego, so to speak, that really separates itself from those troublesome emotions, reactions, because it's tortured by that stuff, and it wants to get away from it, and wants to go somewhere else and have a vacation over here. But once you wake up and you keep on going and going and going and going, all those things that you ran away from, you got a new angle on them, because you're no longer terrified of them. You realize it's just the flavor of ice cream, and you are ice cream. Rage, that's strawberry. Contempt, that's rocky road. Disgust, wow, look at that, that's pralines and cream. And so on. All different flavors of ice cream, all different flavors of being. This can be very confusing for people, because they're like, I thought you had to get rid of all that stuff to be spiritual. No, you pretty much do. You have to let it all go and bypass it, and then when you're no longer afraid of being human and having all these responses, and you are strong enough to have the full spectrum of experience back online, then you're like, yeah, I'll take pralines and cream, chocolate mint, Oreo, rocky road, because you're not running away. And there are circumstances which genuinely merit rocky road as a response. Absolutely. It would be inauthentic to be anything else, because if there's something that inspires rage or contempt or disgust, and you have this spiritual paradigm, template, program that says that you can't be all that and you've got to be dissociated from that, well, you've actually become inauthentic, because what's really happening is your body mind is having a true experience of rage, contempt, disgust. You going to suppress your body mind for some spiritual thought? Well, that's not how it works when you're really, really awake, because you realize, oh, that's just a thought trying to suppress everything else. And why is that thought more significant, more important than all this other stuff that's happening elsewhere in the body mind? Why must this singular thought dominate? And when it does, oh, look, I'm inauthentic. I'm in dissociation, because I'm telling this natural reactivity and response to go to hell. You don't want to do that, Because when you're really, really awake, you're like, ooh, that's me too. That's me. That's me. Ooh, everything's a flavor of ice cream. Everything. So lately, you know, it's been fascinating with all this shenanigans, global fuckery, worldwide insanity with this scamdemic. And it's so intriguing to contemplate how various people respond. And the responses are all over the map. But then you start to really see who's your people, your tribe, as they say. People who can be spiritual, but I say they're post-spiritual. Like, they've been doing the work for a long time to wake up spiritually, and they can also just spin a nice conspiratorial angle on reality. And they don't shy away. They see the evil and they call out the evil. They're pissed, they feel anger, disgust, contempt, rage, because they know the wool's being pulled over our eyes. That we've got billions of flocks of sheep, zombies, everywhere, just complying with this psychopathic agenda. So you can be spiritual and be awake to the fuckery and have a true, authentic response that's not dissociated. Like, well, I would be pissed off, but I'm spiritual, so I can't be pissed off. I would be full of rage, contempt, disgust, but I gotta keep my meditation. So many different responses all over the spectrum. I don't know about you, but I've found so many amazing people who can fire on all these cylinders. And they don't have to throw those cylinders back in the shed. They can keep firing them. You know, they're alive. These individuals, they're politically alive in the sense that they have a sharp mind for the political shenanigans happening. Spiritually awake, they're in tune with their own emotional responses and reactivities to things, so they're in touch with their body mind. They're just real, and they are kind of like got all these, you know, I said firing all cylinders. It's also like being a schooner on that ocean, and you've got like 20 sails and they're all unfurled, and you're like, you're catching the wind. You're catching the wind. Some people only have 1 or 2 sails, you know, and they can't really go that fast and they can't go that far. But what we really want to do is just pop open 20, 25, 30 sails on that schooner, and it's got to be a big schooner. It's got to be voluminous. It's got to carry a lot of psyche, a lot of sentience, a lot of self. And that whole schooner of self has got myriad sails for catching all of these facets of reality, not just our particular idiosyncratic favorites, but all of it. We just keep on sailing. We keep on gathering the wind. We don't stop.